Hi, I'm Michelle Smart. I'm an enrolled agent, and I'm just updating you on some of the new requirements on the ERC for anyone who's using the PEO with ADP. So ADP has a department called Totalsource, and if you file your payroll with them and you did the ERC, they have now just sent out new qualifier forms that you must fill out in order to get your ERC from them. So just as a reminder, a PEO is a professional employer organization, and what that means is that the ERC or the payroll forms are filed under the EIN, the federal EIN of the PEO. So in other words, if you have a 941X in your own employer identification number, then you're not using a PEO. Some people are not aware whether they are using a PEO or not, but those people who are using ADP Totalsource as a PEO and have filed for the employee retention tax credit are just getting this letter and this requirement. So let's look at what's happening. So this is the new letter that's come out, and this is an email coming from ADP. So in order to ensure that you're able to effectively work with the IRS on behalf of your 2021 quarter, well, this is specific to someone, in order to work with your ERC claim, they need additional eligibility information, and they have sent two different forms, which I'm going to go through with you. So one is a pretty simple attestation form. They want this right away. If you don't have this information, then whoever filed for your ERC did not do their work. Now, it is rather cumbersome to go in and file it according to how ADP wants it done. However, this documentation you should have if you have properly filed your ERC. So this is the attestation letter and the information. They want you to check the box that of the quarters that you qualify. They want you to tell them if you qualified by gross receipts, if you qualified by partial suspension, or if you qualified as a recovery startup business. You have to read through this and claim they've added in red, as you can see, that you acknowledge, that you understand that ADP is not responsible for what the IRS does, obviously. And this is a new form. If you signed an attestation before, it was different. This is the new one. So let's go into the spreadsheet, which is quite extensive, that they want, and they will not release your funds, even if they get them from the IRS, until you have filled out this form correctly. So let's just, the number of tabs here. So this is just each section. This is describing each of the tabs and each of the sections of information. Not all of this will apply to every person or every company. So they want to know, did you qualify by gross receipts? And if you qualified by gross receipts, you need to go into that. I'm hitting that tab, gross receipts test. And that means that they're going to show what your gross receipts were for a certain quarter in 2019 and for the qualifying quarter in 2020 or 2021. And they want to see that the correct percentage was achieved in order to qualify by gross receipts. They want the numbers in here. So back to the checklist. Okay, please provide requested information to show how COVID affected your business. So let's go. This is quite extensive, and hopefully if you've applied for the ERC, you should have done this. Now I'm going to send you over, if you haven't done this, to watch how to qualify by partial suspension. I have a very detailed video about how you do that, which is basically you're starting usually at the governor's website, and you are getting the orders, the executive orders, and any health department orders, county orders, state orders, and seeing how that applies to your business. So what they're wanting you to explain, if your company doesn't meet the gross receipts test, please explain, about your business operations, the description of your activity, whether you essential or non-essential. Being an essential business does not disqualify you, but it will fall under some different rules, and so they'll be looking at that. Please describe the impact that COVID had on you. This is such an important section right in here, because just my experience in talking to different uh, businesses, a lot of people think they qualify by things that just where they were suspended. And no, that is not how you qualify. There has to be an order that suspended you. So just shutting down your business because people were afraid or people were sick, none of that qualifies you. You have to go through and make sure that those orders relate back specifically to your business and how you did your business. And it has to be, again, a 10% suspension of your business. So, and that's what they get into here. Now, oh, I'm trying to remember the bulletin number. If it's 20-49, it's in my other video, the actual bulletin where the IRS says you have to have a 10% suspension in your business to qualify for the ERC. What I find really interesting here is it's undefined according to the IRS. So what we've discussed is, what does 10% suspension look like? So I have businesses where 10% of their gross receipts were a particular area of their business, maybe that's several different areas or different activities, and 10% of that was suspended. So they're asking for that and proof of that. So in other words, they've defined it. It looks like the legal team for ADP has come and said, I want to know what that definition is for the 10% suspension. And they are just giving you a few options here. So one of them is if 10% of gross receipts. So that doesn't mean you had a 10% gross receipts reduction. It means that that department. So for example, let's say you had a grocery store and the deli was 10%. The gross receipts of the deli in 2019 was 10% of the gross receipts of the entire business. And due to orders from the state, a lot of your deli was shut down. This is what they're asking for. So how were you shut down? Show me the 10%. And they're asking in two different ways. One is by the gross receipts, showing that percentage of the business was at least 10% that was suspended. And then they're asking also, another way to look at it is the number of employees involved in certain activities that were suspended. So you'll have a business where you have an office department, you will have an R&D department, you'll have a manufacturing department, you'll have different departments. So which department was suspended and how many of those employees were suspended? Sometimes you'll have one employee that does 50% one activity and 50% in another, and they were 50% suspended. So what they're looking for in this is the percentage of the employees that were affected. So this is how they're trying to qualify you back relating to that bulletin that the IRS put out saying there was a 10% suspension. ADP's legal team has defined that as 10% of employees, or the portion of your business that was suspended was had 10% of their gross receipts were allocated to that portion of the business. So what they're asking here is for you to give the narrative, which is, I've always said, is the first step in qualifying for the ERC. If you did not qualify by gross receipts reduction, you have to explain what your business did. You have to explain how it was suspended, and those suspensions must tie to a direct order from the government. So this cannot be the CDC suggested. It has to be a direct order, usually from the state or the county or the state's health department. You will find those. In California, every county had different rules. For example, Santa Clara had some of the strictest rules of all of the counties. And if your business was in Santa Clara County, then you have more strict restrictions than elsewhere. So now comes this next tab, governmental orders. And wow, what they want a lot in here. So they want, you could have multiple companies. They're also looking at aggregation, which I won't get into too much here. They want a link to the governmental order, which I did not provide. I inserted a PDF here because those links are all dead. And this is a 6-year potential to be audited. So a link isn't going to be there 6 years. So I just inserted PDFs. I saved them off of all the government websites a long time ago because they've been disappearing. So we have to have a government order number. So for example, you could have California NO well, Nevada was 010 and California has executive order 2021-01, something like that. There's a number and there's a date. Here's the description of the order. So the first one I have for California is it's executive order, I forget what it is, but it's 3/19/20, and that is a stay-at-home order, which is going to affect anybody who's a non-essential business. Here's the government start date, the government order end date, which is going to be interesting because all the new orders created an extension of the original order, and then there's another extension of the original order. So this is a little more difficult than it sounds like. The wage eligibility start date and the end date. So they're asking for a lot of information there. They want the laws. Again, look at my video on how to qualify by partial suspension. I will go into each of these details of what they need to have. Okay, they've given you some examples here of what they are looking for. The example is a restaurant either has an indoor capacity, maximum capacity limited to a certain percentage, restricted to only offering curbside pickup. Well, this was one of the orders in California Blueprint for a Safer Economy. They had capacity limitations all throughout the entire time that was in effect, which was August 28th, 2020 through June the 14th, 2021. So they're just giving different examples. Medical practice is restricted from providing elective procedures, and that's the period of time they're looking for. You only get the ERC for the period of time that law suspended you. It doesn't matter if the customers didn't show up because they are afraid, that does not qualify you. It has to be, again, an order, not a suggestion. So these are just different examples that they've given to you. They're also, oh my goodness, and if you haven't done this already, it just shows this should have been done on your spreadsheets, because this is the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. So most everyone got this money and it cannot be used for ERC, so you need to deduct it out, and they are wanting you to fill this out, the loan amount, the forgiveness, the pay period, and so forth. Federal grants that are ineligible. So example, well, not sure R&D is exactly a grant, but there are certain grants like Restaurant Revitalization Program. The wages that are used for the program cannot also be used for ERC. So there are some programs that you just have to check. There are a lot of deductions that have to come out of potential ERC wages, and one of them is federal grants that were given for wages. And just a side note on nonprofits, I have a whole nother video on nonprofits because this may not apply to you. I'm not going to say specifically it's going to be by nonprofit and by grant, but essentially the federal grants office is not auditing the ERC, so that's a whole nother topic. So they're looking for federal grants that were used for wages, and then you cannot, again, use those federal grants for the ERC. It has to be deducted out. Okay, here's again what I've talked about. FFCRA has to be deducted out. What is that? That's paid sick leave and vacation pay that you got for COVID. So it will be on your 941X if you took it, and you don't have your 941 or your schedule that you got. It should show what was FFCRA wages that you already got credit for. You don't get credit for them twice. So in other words, they're not eligible for ERC. So these are really, okay, owners, this is bit by bit exactly why I've said this is not a do-it-yourself project. Owners and family members. So if there's somebody who owns the business more than 50%, they and their family members are not eligible for ERC, and they also must be taken out. So they are really asking for a lot of specific information. And then again, related companies. So this gets into the aggregation rules on the ERC. So you cannot have over 100 employees aggregated for the year 2020. And well, they're looking at 2019 as the year that you qualify. Average full-time employees, there's not full-time equivalents like in PPP, it's average full-time employees in 2019. If you had over 100, and then you've got to do the whole schedule, count them per month, who's full-time and exactly how they qualify as full-time according to the rules on the ERC. So you can't have over 100 for the year 2020 and over 500 for the year 2021. So this gets into the related companies where you have to aggregate. So that means that if you have 5 different companies that you owned 50% or more of that company, all those employees have to be added together. And that's a qualifier or a disqualifier for ERC, I should say, because those rules apply as to the maximum number of employees that you can have. For ERC for 2020 is 100 aggregated, and for 2021 is 500 aggregated. So this is just a little quick overview of the information that is being requested by ADP. They say that it's urgent, and they've also said we are not going to be giving you your ERC refund, even if we've got it, if you do not fulfill this, if you do not if you do not sign the attestation, and if you do not fill out this form correctly, they will not give you their refund. And why is that? The PEOs are responsible. So let's say you file for ERC because you just thought I could get it and you didn't do all this work that you should have done. And then the IRS audits, and the IRS says, well, you didn't qualify. You need to refund the money back to the IRS. Guess who's on the hook? It's the PEO. The PEO is on the hook for that money because it's filed under the EIN of the PEO. So they are the responsible party, and you are responsible to them as a co-employer. And so their legal team should have done this years ago when this whole thing started, to protect themselves, as well as to make sure there were not fraudulent claims. So if you have any questions about that, please send me an email, MichelleSmartEA@gmail.com, and I will answer your questions as best that I can. This form is very interesting because I'm now seeing the legal interpretation of qualifying by 10% suspension according to ADP Total Source. So thank you for watching. I'm Michelle Smart.